All right, so I am Adrien Lee, work primarily in large-scale ceramics. Some of the themes that I'll be running through in my recent body of work are themes of contradiction, labor, vulnerability, aggression, and of course, scale. So these next three slides will be pieces that I've been working on or have finished, and they are primarily of hyenas, and I've been using these scavenger animals as a type of concept of contradiction amongst labor, kind of the environment that we're in, and just a contradictory element to either more of like a institutional theme of So I was working with these the imagery of hyena as an animal in contradiction to the cathedral, and I was looking at the cathedral as more of like maintenance and how much work we put into keeping these huge, beautiful pieces of limestone up and going that are just something from the past. Whereas these hyenas, who are primarily, I don't know if you all know much about hyenas, but they're primarily female dominant hierarchy in their tribes. All the men are kind of pushed to the side in these in their hierarchy. So it's really interesting. They're resilient to viruses, like they're resilient to anthrax. They're really closely related to more of like the primate kind of social structures. So I found them to be really interesting and a really great way to kind of contradict that history within Catholicism and the maintenance and the power of these gigantic cathedral buildings. So if you want to hit the slide. So I made kind of like a group of these hyena animals that have a growing like cyst, or are being somehow pressured with a building or some type of growth that is kind of attached to these animals. Go ahead and hit the next slide. So this was a larger piece, an adult hyena that I built in two parts. With that coming into size and dealing with size in ceramics has been something that I've been wanting to challenge myself within the past couple of years. Size is very difficult with ceramics. It kind of leads to having a base all the time, and you're kind of building from the ground up. Labor is very important in my work. The fact that I'm working with huge pieces of clay, continually working by hand, building on an armature. It's very laborious task, and you don't know what you're going to get out of it. You don't know if these pieces are going to crack in the kiln, and so that's been kind of a concept that I've started to implement more into my work, the process in which I work and the labor that I use in my work, making the work. So you'd like to hit the next slide. So I started looking at vultures and their resilience as a scavenger animal, and juxtaposing that with my process. My process is I build solid with clay and build it onto an armature. I started putting that armature back into my work to break up the composition, form new compositions and question the process of life. Vultures are usually seen as kind of an animal of death. You know, they kind of remind everybody that death will be, you know, is the cycle of life and will be a part of us. So I was thinking a lot about process and how we spend our lives making things and what is around us and what is helping our ecosystem that, you know, we shouldn't be afraid of. So I started firing these pieces and then re-implementing these structures that I would use during the building process. Right? All right, if you'd like to hit the slides. So my work also, as a young boy, I was into the punk rock scene, so a lot of my imagery and style comes from elements of punk rock. So using tattoos, using these mohawks, these kind of studded jackets, these human beings that are kind of, in a way, not wanting to be a part of the normal society. There's a saying that, like, a punk rock kind of guy is always trying to find contradiction in something, and if contradiction isn't there, they're gonna make the contradiction, right? So again, started implementing my my process within the sculpture of using these armatures as a kind of skeletal structure to implement process within my work. Go ahead and hit the slide, sorry. Again, working large scale has been a really huge challenge for me, and also getting rid of the ceramic base that I see in a lot of large scale ceramics. I've been trying to push away from that. So I have more of a process of sculpting that resembles more classical sculpture, where I'm kind of building up in the air and not really focusing on building from the ground up. This particular sculpture is getting more into like monumental size. I've been kind of playing around with looking at monuments and the sculptures that we see around us in public places. My introduction into sculpture and art was being able to view it in public spaces and in free museum days on Sundays. So I have a passion for that, and I kind of want to also resemble that in my artwork, to kind of have a more accessible viewing for my audience, for my sculpture. So my goal is to have it more in public spaces where it's more accessible to people that don't really always have the chance to see art. Go ahead and so working with process, I started to kind of work around the challenges of working in a large scale. And with ceramics, it's very difficult, of course, because it's very heavy. You need to carry it, you need to store it. And coming from the punk rock scene, we kind of used to sew our clothes together or reuse clothes. And I thought about how I can use that in order to make larger work. So I started firing my work into pieces and sewing it together with a large kind of thread rope, and just paying a little bit of homage to that kind of style of craft within the punk rock scene, which is quite fun. Also still looking at monuments and the symbolism of monuments and how sometimes they can kind of be, those symbols change through time. And this was kind of my version of, like, what if I was making these gigantic punk rock monuments? What happens in the future? Does that symbol somehow change into a different perspective, and these monuments kind of get toppled over because the contradiction has gone too far to where punks are contradicting punks or something, you know? Yeah, you could go ahead and hit the next slide, please. So again, with my process, I started looking at what I was using, the materials that I was using in my process, which was mainly clay, but I would need a place to store this clay. And in the ceramics, if you're ever in a ceramic studio, there are these Rubbermaid trash cans everywhere that we continually use. And I was like, these are my spirit animal. Like, these are constantly what I use. And you either love them or you either hate them. You know, they're just there. They're always there, and they're a great utilitarian tool for ceramics. So I started kind of wanting to take that from the ground and put it in the air, put it on a pedestal to show the importance of this tool within my process. So this is kind of a large piece where I'm still using kind of an armature that I use within my practice, and yeah, so it's quite a fun way of working. Go ahead. Again, now I'm starting to mix scavenger animals. These are insects, these are blowflies that are a part of your stereotypical kind of genre of scavenger animals, and mixing that punk rock studded and barnacle kind of symbolism within these buckets, trying to make them my own, you know. Go ahead and hit the next slide. This is another bucket where I was trying to symbolize the use of reusing the material of clay. Sometimes I'll sculpt things out. It doesn't work. I throw it in these buckets. Do they get, with the intention of throwing it out into the dumpster, but they started becoming new compositions of work, and I just started to have to use that composition with these vessels. I mean, ceramics is very tied to the craft of container making, and even if you're building a sculpture in ceramics, it still resembles a container. So, so yeah, very interesting pieces that I'm still in the works of really finishing and touching up on concepts. But go ahead and hit the next slide, please. So another part of my practice is using music in order to pass the time while I'm making these works, and trying to implement that into my work of showing movement within the pieces is something that really intrigued me over the past 2 years, and something that I wanted to kind of show in a visual way. I was never really too great with like rhythm and music, but I've always loved to listen to music. So trying to formulate that into a visual composition was something that I was looking to explore and exploring in the future. So I started to use fabric or drapery in terms to use movement within my pieces to show movement. Also texture, like cross-hatching, had come to show up in my style of rendering, just so I can get more depth within either the clay body or the color that I was using. Of course, using dog animal muzzles to kind of show that aggressive rhythm within the punk rock music that I'm kind of listening to as I work. Yeah, go ahead and hit the next slide. So these next few slides are going to be more kind of an offshoot of some of the work that I've been doing, still kind of implementing that texture of cross-hatching and a very coarse grog within my clay body. This is actually a piece from when I used to live here. I didn't build it while I was living here, but I built it when I moved to New Orleans. And it was kind of, so where I lived over here, it was on 1926 Oklahoma Place on the north side of Tulsa. And when I got there, there was this pit bull that used to kind of guard the street. And over the year and a half that I lived there, it was kind of this love-hate relationship with this dog, because it would definitely protect that street. So we never had any problem with, you know, thieves or anything like that. But it was also a thing where we couldn't really take walks around the block because we knew this dog was outside and was ready to just attack our legs anytime it got the chance to. But once we kind of got settled in, the dog would actually knew that we were a part of that street, and it kind of took care of us. But during that time, this dog, like, you could tell that it was going through just the most, maybe the most miserable life ever. While the year and a half that I was there, it had 3 litters. They would just breed this dog constantly. It was always outside. Puppies would leave within the month to get sold. So yeah, it just, you know, showed me the resilience of, you know, the environment and a symbol of that road that I lived on. So yeah, before I left to Tulsa before I left to Tulane, about a month before, the dog just ended up disappearing, and it was kind of like, oh, well, that's really, really sad. So yeah, it was kind of, this piece is kind of meant as a monument to that road, and my goal is to actually place it on the corner of that road. I don't know if the residents would really appreciate that or not, but we'll see what happens. In a punk rock themed way, I will just go there and place it one day. For now, it travels around with me to my shows and sits there on the corner or on the floor watching over the gallery. So you can go ahead and hit the next slide. So this is a piece that I haven't really been, from my military experience, I've been like, it's a way of kind of catharsis to work with clay, to kind of think about all of the experiences that I've been through and, you know, put them into clay and see what the clay does with those experiences. So this piece is kind of about the transition from the military and into the clay community and how much of a difference that is. I mean, I went from somewhere that was, you know, punishment all the time to a place where it was very forgiving and everybody wore Birkenstocks. So to me, it's just a great, a very different transition. But with that, I started to learn more about ceramics, started meeting new people, and I found that most of the time when I'm working, I'm rendering sculptures out by memory. So I'm kind of studying things just all the time, just visualizing things, looking at things, and I keep those in my memory. And I have a lot of memories from the military. And I found that while making this piece, a lot of those memories kind of, I couldn't remember a few things about the military. And though they were like small little simple things, I realized that that's a good thing. At least I'm losing some of those memories, some of those bad memories that I don't really need anymore. So this piece was kind of like a symbol of that transition from the military and into these kind of like using your hands for creation, and of course the beauty of reduction fired glazes within your hands is just an amazing process. So yeah, I think that might be it. Yep. So if you all want to follow me to the veil piece down at the end of the gallery, it might have some resemblance to a lot of the old kind of Renaissance style drapery and figures. And I use this drapery to kind of implement movement inside something that is very static. Taking a little bit of the style of vanitas, which is a subgenre of Baroque, where a lot of Dutch painters were painting skulls and burnt out candles and books and things like that within their paintings to symbolize vanity and death and the cycle of life and how it's just a natural cycle, right? I'm a super emotional man, and I think within like the man, like I have two brothers, very masculine dominated family, and we don't really show that much vulnerability. So I find that I start to show vulnerability within my art, within these sculptures. So the use of hearts has shown up quite a few times within my past work, and it will show up more within my future work. Again, a reference to the cycle of life and movement and process. So that is it. Thank you.